From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
It's Groundhog's Day, everyone. February 2nd, 2022, 2222, 4 twos. It's kind of like a prime, like it's 2 plus 2 equals 4. Then it's 2022, right? So it's 2222. Either way, however you write the date today, whether you're in Europe or the US, you're writing it the same way. Happens once every like millennia. Like the next one will all be dead because it'll be 3333. So that could be 2033. Some of us may not be here by then. I don't know if the planet will be here by then. But nonetheless, it's a great day to be here. It's Wednesday, February 2nd. I hope everyone's doing well. You're having a good week. We're at the midway point of the week. A lot of things going on in the world of cybersecurity. So don't go anywhere. We've got a really, really packed show. We're going to get right to it here in just a minute. Before we do, though, a quick shout out to KnowBe4 for the support of our show. Please make sure to go check them out. You can see more in the show notes. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can catch us on all your favorite platforms. Make sure you follow our LinkedIn business page. If you're watching us there, CyberHub Podcast /CISO Talk, you'll see it. It's all of our content in one spot. You can subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform and go check out our brand new website, cyberhubpodcast.com. A ton of content there, including my friends over at Breaking Into Cybersecurity with the latest things of how to jumpstart your career in security. Good morning to some folks. Shout outs. Let's go, Scott, Brent. Good morning, Eddie, and everyone else who is here this morning. Before we get started on today's show, we got to enjoy a little cup of Joe, right? A little coffee. Get the ball rolling today. This is my 4th double espresso. I mean, I've been up for since 4 a.m. It's now 9:05 Eastern. I've been up for 5 hours. Like for some people at this point, they break and take lunch. So the beauty of having a 3-month-old baby at home and so fun stuff. But anyways, coffee cup cheers, folks. And if you're wondering, yes, this is my Cubs mug. I am not a big Cubs fan, but I sure love this specific mug. It has sentimental value, which is really, really important. So let's get into what's going on with APT35 and Memento Ransomware. So security researchers over at Cybereason are looking at an Iranian cyber espionage operation. The Iranian, mostly it's operating as contractors for the Iranian government. They scan the web for the popular types of server, use exploits for recently disclosed vulnerabilities to gain control over unpatched systems. If the compromised networks belong to an entity of interest to the Iranian government, the groups deploy malware that can be used to harvest information from the hacked system and maintain persistence and access for future intel collection. However, if the target has no value for the attackers, access to the system is either sold on underground forums or monetized by the threat actor themselves by deploying a ransomware to extort some of these targets. And that strain specifically is Charming Ken. We talked about this yesterday. And it was named Powerless. We wrote it. It's ran in PowerShell. It's deployed on hacked Microsoft Exchange servers. And now this new malware is actually in its intelligence collection piece as well. This includes shared IP addresses, similar file naming schemes, and similar URL directory patterns to the Memento gang. So a lot of things going on. This Memento, which was discovered last year by Sophos, was targeting unpatched VMware vCenter servers, which are, by the way, also now in the Log4j list of must patched. So keep that in mind. Sophos did highlight what's going on with Memento back then. So a lot going on from Iran because they are on the prowl, folks. They are on the prowl. Good night to Oya, who is joining us, and wherever she is, it's night. Good morning to David. Thank you for being here, David. All right, we'll move on to another one. MosesStaff, a politically motivated hacker group that's tied to a series of espionage and sabotage attacks on Israeli entities in 2021, incorporated a previously undocumented RAT that masquerades as a window calculator app as part of a conscious effort to stay under the radar. Cybereason named this one to the Iranian Again, Iran in the news, actor known as MosesStaff, they've dubbed it as the malware as StrifeWater. The StrifeWater RAT appears to be used in the initial stage of the attacks of the stealthy RAT, has the ability to remove itself from the system to cover Iranian groups' tracks, according to Cyber analysis. And the RAT possesses other capabilities like command execution and screen capturing, as well as the ability to download additional extension. MosesStaff came to light towards the end of last year when it was unmasked, unmasked series of attacks aimed at Israeli organizations with the objective of disrupting the target's business operation by encrypting their networks. No option to regain access or negotiate a ransom. They simply wanted to disrupt. To date, victims have been reported beyond Israel, including Italy, India, Germany, Chile, Turkey, the UAE, and the US. The new piece of the attack puzzle, which was discovered by CyberReason, comes in the form of a RAT that's deployed under the name calc.exe and is used during the early stages of the infection chain, only to be removed prior to the deployment of the malware. The removal and the subsequent replacement of the malicious calculator executable with the legitimate binary, according to researchers, is an attempt on the part of the threat actor to cover up tracks, erase evidence of the Trojan, not to mention enable them to evade detection until the final phase of the attack. Also, no one says that's how they got in. So they're still able to use the calc.exe executable anywhere else they want to go. Again, on the prowl, targeting organizations. We work and live in a global economy today, and we see that there. We're going to move on to a different story. Yours truly here has been a defender and an outspoken critic of NSO. And a few weeks ago, I brought up a story here by the Times of Israel of how there was a report that Pegasus was being used by Israeli police to spy on Israeli citizens' phones. And at the time, Israeli police were like, no, we're not doing it. We don't know what you're talking about. No one's done it. Well, then comes an investigation, and now here we go. There's possible improper surveillance by our very own. So Israeli police are now saying that, yeah, someone actually did get access to Pegasus, and they did use it to unlawfully surveil citizens, but it's really not our fault. It's NSO's. This goes back to the whole idea of just offensive cybersecurity technology as a whole. Do you blame the manufacturer, or do you look at the user? And I don't blame, when someone shoots someone, I don't blame the gun manufacturer. I blame the person. I think the same could be applied here. We know what their business is, and so far, but I don't know. Citizens Lab's been after NSO for as long as one can remember, and so that's why you hear about it. But nonetheless, now we know that users actually used it and manipulated it. Who would have thunk it? A BazarBackdoor malware drops a malicious CSV text file that's used for its installation. This is a new phishing campaign. It's using a specially crafted CSV text file to infect users' devices with the BazarBackdoor malware. The CSV file is a text file containing lines of text with columns of data separated by commas. In many cases, the first line of text is the header or description for each column. A very basic CSV contains the capitals of some U.S. states, as you see below. And as you can see, the above file contains nothing but text, but when loaded into Excel, the data is presented very, very differently. Using a CSV is a popular method to export data from applications that can then be imported into different programs as data sources, whether that be Excel, database, password managers, or billing software. Since the CSV is simply text with no executable code, many people consider these types of files absolutely harmless. However, the Microsoft Excel supports a feature called Dynamic Data Exchange, which can be used to execute commands whose output is inputted into the CSV type of files. And actors can now also abuse this specific feature to execute commands that download and install malware on unsuspecting victims. The new phishing campaign, which was spotted by Chris Campbell, a security researcher, is installing the Bazar loader and backdoor Trojan through the malicious CSV. Its stealthy backdoor is created by the TrickBot group to provide threat actors remote access to internal devices that can be used as a springboard for further lateral movements within the network. The phishing emails pretend to be a payment remittance advice with links to remote sites that download a CSV file with names similar to like document-219or66.csv and so forth. Like all CSV files, the document 219er66 file is just a text file with columns of data, but it does have a bunch of executables in it, which automatically execute a PowerShell, and then it downloads a JPEG, you save it, and then it runs a DLL program, then it's executed, and you get the drift from there because, well, from there on out, the process is simply all the same. Once the Bazar backdoor is installed, it allows threat actors access to corporate networks, which they'll use to move laterally and then deploy the ransomware and steal data. So all of that in a CSV. If you're using Google Chrome, there's 27 vulnerabilities that were patched with the latest release of Chrome 98, and 19 of those vulnerabilities were reported by external researchers. So make sure you update your Chrome device ASAP. And our final story today is one I've seen a lot of people write about this and talk about it. I've actually examined it, read it last night, examined it. It's not a big deal, but you should be aware of it. So there's a firmware vulnerability in UEFI, and here's the thing about UEFI: it's in everything, right? It's in every laptop. It's everywhere. It's essentially the Unified Extendable Firmware Interface. That's what it stands for, and it interfaces between the device firmware and the OS. It handles the booting process, system diagnostics, and repair functions. Does a lot of very different things. Now there are a bunch of vulnerabilities with it, but all of those vulnerabilities have very little meaning. What does that mean? It takes a lot to do them. A lot of the devices that have these vulnerabilities are either end of life or being phased out, or they're no longer being supported. But if you do have some of these old devices, there's a bunch of CVEs here that are attributed to it. Some of these have a 9.8 severity CVSS score, and they could be exploited. Some of it is an SMM callout, which is privilege escalation, memory corruption, a bunch of those. So only a few companies have gotten firmware updates, but the firmware updates actually need to go to those companies, and then they need to push it down to your device. So it's just not as easy. So just keep your eye out for this and have good inventory. Folks, that's it for our show today. I'll be back with a lot more tomorrow to wrap up this week right here on your favorite podcast listening platform and on your favorite social media network. Please make sure to subscribe. Go check out our new website, cyberhubpodcast.com. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, thank you for tuning in and spending your morning with me. Go have a cup of coffee. Let's get started. Criminals don't wait. So stay cyber safe. Cheers.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.